bit by bit, we came to realize what was going to happen. The government came, they contacted, and some of you people experienced this too, they contacted us. One thing that was important was whether you were a Republican or a Democrat, how much compensation you got for your property. My grandmother hated the Democrats to the day she died. She would have cursed Franklin D. Roosevelt to his grave because he killed the little pigs and all of that sort of thing that was done in the 1930s. Anyway, these rumors came and grew. And then when we finally realized that it was going to be a reality and people's homes were being seized and they were being required to leave, I remember my grandfather went up to close to the brick church and was looking at a farm to buy. And Eileen just told me tonight, I didn't really remember, that her father also was up in that area looking for a farm to buy. Fortunately, neither one of us lost our home farms, but her father lost another farm that he did own. My ties are to the White Deer Valley Baptist Church. Probably 50% of the people in the graveyard are related to me somehow or other. I also have relatives buried at Messiah Lutheran, up above where the Presbyterian Church. Marion mentioned the Presbyterian Church, and I have memories of that and of picnics that we, with the Baptists, had with the Presbyterians. It was a beautiful church, it really was, and just gone. So there's a lot of bitterness, a lot of hard feelings that will never die that came out of that experience. Eileen's dad, Carl, and Dr. Meek were the two people that headed the opposition to it. How many of you remember Dr. Meek?
I remember Jean Meek.
Dr. Elizabeth Meek. Well, she was my Latin teacher. And she was a strict disciplinarian. And my one vivid memory, well, she said I was the worst rebel she ever knew. But my one memory of Dr. Meek is when we were filing single file down the halls, and nobody does that in high school anymore, it's just helter-skelter. We went in line, you remember, Jackie? And one boy stepped out of line, and she had a drumstick in her hand, and she hit him over the head and broke the drumstick. But anyway, I'll turn it over to my wife. She'll have the last word.
No facts, just rumors for a long, long time as to what was happening as far as the valley is concerned. And everything at that point, well, at the end of just about every article on the paper, there's Remember Pearl Harbor. And certainly the feeling was very, very strong that we were going to have to get in the war, and we needed more munitions and all that kind of thing. And my dad Dad and Dr. Meek got together on a lot of this stuff. And they made trips to Washington. They made arrangements ahead of time to meet with senators. They got to Washington, and the senators were out of town, or at least were not. They were told that they were out of town.
Still out of town.
There were petitions. There were all kinds of things going on. Because the valley here, and my dad was a graduate of, what was the name of Williamsport?
School of Commerce.
School of Commerce. And he knew how to make records and get all the information he could. And he could prove that this was one of the best valleys, the best farmland in the state. And there were all these other places that, like the coal mining areas where it wasn't doing too much, that you could use the ground on top of the coal mines. So you could do all kinds of things. But there was no listening. And so we inherited, well, I guess Dad gave them to you, a whole mess of clippings right from the beginning of when they first started hearing the rumors that they were going to pick our valley to do something. And yet, even those rumors were unsubstantiated. You couldn't get any real answers. Here's one from 72. Virtual assurance given, plant will be constructed. The next one is White Deer area may be location for a U.S. depot. Then other articles, and he has the clippings from the Montgomery paper, from the Wingsport Grit and Sun Gazette, from Sunbury and all the other towns around, and he collected all of these. And so it's really quite an interesting thing as you look through, because you couldn't get any proof from anybody of what was happening. Government to erect huge plant in area. That's another article. Given the same amount of credence. Definite indication that the government is getting a huge depot. March 1, 42. They're still at this point going to erect a plant in the valley. So this is March. They had to have known what was happening, because yet a couple months later, you've got things that are, they're starting to move in and starting to evaluate properties. And their evaluation of properties was unbelievable. They had people who did not know anything about farming in the first place. So we had the farm that I lived at is just, the back of our farm is only half a mile from South Mountain. But we had a fairly prosperous farm. But they bought another farm about, by the road, it would have been about a mile. If you just crossed over, and I had done that, I'd walked back and forth. And it's no more than a half mile away, which was one that was going to be seized. And on the farm, before we had bought the farm, there was a house and a barn, and the barn was pretty much in shambles. It had been a tenant farm for many, many years, in very, very poor condition, which is why he got it fairly cheap. And actually let the people that had stayed there, they could live there. We would do nothing, to fix it or anything. But if they wanted to just live there, and this was Depression times, they could stay, which they did. So when the ordinance, when the financial people were going around, they said, if it's a rundown house, a rundown barn, it can't have any value. Dad had the records of what he had cleared. Well, my dad believed in starting at the basics, which was to put loads of fertilizer and lime and everything. So although we didn't make much the first couple of years, the idea was to bring it back up, because with the tenant farming and never putting stuff back on, it wasn't producing too well. But anyway, the amount, and he had all the records there. But what they finally ended up offering, and what actually was received, was not quite what he made, could show that he made as a profit on that place for 1 year. And you had no recourse, particularly if you were a Republican, which we happened to be. I mean, there were very few people that got paid a decent amount, and you knew exactly what their politics were from day one. I mean, it's true. I mean, it's not just because we happen to be Republican. But let's face it, if you don't even are offered and you only got less than what you made on the farm for a year, I mean, that's pretty sad. And people were extremely bitter. In our valley, among the families that were there, whether they started out Republican or Democrat, I would say that 95% of them at least were Republican by the time it was over, because it was so unfair, the whole thing. And especially when they wouldn't talk to you. Right? And many of the articles, and I have scads of them, these are in order in which in which they came. They started in 1972. 42. I'm cracking up. I said that to you tonight. The brain is going. So, anyway, time went on. And you could not get answers from anybody. You tried through the people that were sent in. You didn't know, for the first year at least, you did not know whether it was going to be an ammunition storage place, an ammunition making place, or what it was, because they just weren't talking, which made really quite a bit of bitterness also. Here you are, many of the farms there had been in the same families for years. Ours was not. We moved in 1933 to the area. And if you have lived in those houses, if you've gone to those churches, if you have put your kids have grown up there and everything, and home is home. And imagine how you would feel if somebody suddenly came and said, well, we're going to take your house and your house and your house and your house, and we set the price. I mean, you have no recourse whatsoever. And so it's sort of sour taste in our mouth, in the fact that things were just done as they were. And one of my memories, I was going to a one-room school, which is right at the end of our lane, and I came home from school in the late afternoon, and a car drove in, and they said my father and Dr. Elizabeth Meek were the two main voices for the whole valley there. By the way, they met usually at the Stone Church. My only memories of being in the Stone Church are from those days when I was, and it was, well, I walk in the lane, and here's this car, the official insignia of the U.S. government. And this guy gets out and comes over and talks to my dad, who's in his overalls. I mean, he's a farmer. The other guy's all dressed up in suit and everything like that. And so he comes over and he starts to, well, he didn't really yell, but he treated him like an Indian. You know, I mean, how can you possibly? You should be proud to do this for your government. And my dad had just about had it, and I almost never heard my dad swear or anything. He said, "To hell with the government!" And he whipped out something from his. He said, he starts to write, and I thought, "Oh my goodness, I'll never see my dad again." But my father said, "I would do anything for my country, but I've just about had it as far as this government is concerned, when they can just come in and take whatever they want and not listen, not talk to you, not tell us anything, do anything." And anyway, I got to see my dad. It was more just his tactic to shut him up, and the other guy's tactic to shut my dad up. But he did say, you know, that I think we should be treated as human beings. We should be let know what's happening. And, you know, I mean, we have a right to feel bitter about this situation. And, of course, nothing ever happened as far as that is concerned. Here in Grit, in March 15, 1942, Undersecretary's letter reveals decision to acquire area for explosives plant. Now, that's one of the first things that we really got something that really said what it was going to be. And it's wrong. It was going to be, the Undersecretary's letter reveals decision to acquire area for explosives plant. It was never an explosives plant. It was a storage area. And if you have the opportunity in hunting season, I guess it's still open, isn't it? That you can go in from the Ilmsport side and go driving up through. And on our farm, the farm that they took, it was 70-some acres. I a little vague. My farm was 78 acres, and I think that it was 72. I'm not positive. But on that farm, there are these huge igloos. They're big cement things. Here's a picture that my dad had. And the things. This was in I guess we must have had it. That was 1997. This is just a picture of what they look like now. But they're huge, and they're big cement bunkers. But they're half circles. I mean, they're. And then they took all the topsoil off to cover these big cement things, so that any planes flying over wouldn't recognize that there was big cement domes there. And so that farm is, we counted them, but I don't remember how many. There were like 40 or 50 of these big cement bunkers there. And when you see that, all you can see there is the front door.
Can I interrupt you a minute?
Yes, please.
Because I worked there.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning up to March 42. And I graduated in June. And they started first they gave us a chemistry course at Lycoming College. And then they trained us. And they were making TNT. It was a TNT.
Did they actually make any TNT?
And there was just an article somewhere that they trained us. They gave us the course, and they trained us 6 months, and they actually operated for 11 months making TNT, and then they closed. But I think it was because they found out about the atom bomb, because they had one half of it done, and they were going to do the other half, and immediately they stopped just like that, and the girls that were training left their weights on the balances and just left. But I think that was because of the atom bomb, that just like that they closed it. So they actually only operated for 11 months. They trained us for 6 months.
They had told us that, and somewhere, someplace, there has to be a copy of this, but my father didn't have it, and nobody that I know has a copy of it. But they had promised that if they ever discontinued, that it would revert to the original owners. Now, in our case, I don't think we would have wanted all those bunkers, although they would be tremendous for storing them. And our son-in-law, we took him out there shortly after he and Vicki got married, and went inside there, and the acoustics are fantastic. He said, he's a musician. Oh, this is wonderful, but you can't use that many domes like that. But anyway, even after they started doing this, and as you said now, with them actually making it, nobody was ever told anything. So that almost everything that everybody thought they knew, they didn't. Because you couldn't verify any facts. You couldn't get any information from the government, which was the major reason why everything never did calm down, as far as some of us are concerned.
Well, that's why they had signs everywhere, even there, about silence. Don't tell anybody what you're doing.
And but it's still a sort of difficult for the people that are living there.
Can I ask, do you have, my father was born in Alvira and grew up there, and his family farm was seized. Do you have any of the documents? We have some from the government about the property being taken. Did you ever look through any of the documents? Did your family have them to see whether it said in any of the official documents from the government that it would be given back to the families if they quit?
We don't seem to have any of them that say that.
I'll have to look.
If you can find it, could I have a copy?
I have a whole bunch of official documents from the government when they took the family farm.
I know a number of people have said, do we have any because they'd like to get.
I'll have to look.
I mean, yeah, why not? Claim it back.
Yeah, we'd like to.
How about?
There's some guy that he was going into the government files about. So I told you
Do you have his name?
no, I have it at home, but I don't remember it. Because and he called me not too long ago and said he was working on it.
You'd have to wonder what 60 Minutes would do with the story.
But we were in two of the homes from Alvira. One of the addresses is 110 because I have a picture of the Alvira analyst. They called us, but we didn't realize that the whole town had been destroyed.
Yeah.
There were 2 houses and a church and a barn, and that's where they trained us.
And our property is directly across the side road from the church. So we were that close, but we did not live in Alvira. We lived over on the road going from Allenwood Fields, which was, if you went straight, probably wouldn't be a half mile. I mean, it would be like 14 miles. Among all of his records, here up March of 31, Valley folk puzzled over many rumors. I mean, that's the title of the article. And sure enough, they are, because again, we're so not sure what's happening. And there's so much here, but I know we're running late with everything. And April 1 of 72. I've got 70. Well, I don't know why I'm doing
You're going to lose 30 years.
We just had a 50th wedding. But here in April the 1st, there's still another article. First option presented for war plant site. Government agents take action for acquiring land in Union and Lycoming counties to build huge units. And then evacuation of farms in the White Deer area starts as plant plan advances. This is from the Gazette Bulletin. But we have them, all these things, Tioga lands may be available for valley farmers. Big whoop. I mean, they'll take care of it, but they might take over somebody else's land to give to us or something, or let us build or something like that. But there are just so many things. Christ Lutheran Church decides on a 10-year plan. That was the Montgomery Era. And that was April the 2nd. And it's just one article after another in all the different papers in the around. Brady Township voting unit may be eliminated. And it's just lots of stuff.
Well, we were told that the reason they took that land is because there was a lot of fog over it. And
That's what they
the
said.
enemy wouldn't be able to detect it.
They said that. All the valleys in the area. I mean, if there are any streams, any lakes, any, I mean, let's face it, that was such an unrealistic excuse for it.
They didn't have radar then, so I guess they wanted all the protection.
Our farm was there, and we had this real long chicken house. Real long chicken house for the laying hens. And that, as a child, I mean, that scared me. You know, I mean, if they punch the over and they see other something. They won't know the ordinance is over there, you know, a couple hundred feet away from me. But it was a scary time, a worrisome time. I don't know if you have any questions or anything, because we've sold a part of the program here yet.
What do you know about Fritz's Station? That was taken over, and I understand there was a power plant started there and abandoned after the
Dam and a pump house.
Yeah, they built a dam, and they did use the water, take the water into that area. I don't know if they were using it for the
Cola TNT. Cola TNT.
might be. I guess that was their reasoning. Yeah. But I don't have, that didn't make the papers. Yeah. So I don't know.
I was wondering if whose idea was this?
Whose idea was it to come here?
Right.
I don't know. It had
The
to come
politician of this district, was it?
I think it came from Washington, but I do not know.
It almost had to be the politicians from this area.
That wanted to make the invite.
We have here the names, which you may want to look at to see if there's any of your family on this, of the people who signed the petition against the coming of the ordinance. It's sheet after sheet after sheet.
I can remember, as I said, going to Stone Church, and my dad had a little, just portable typewriter, and he was taking notes and stuff. But he always took these along, and the original, of course, was sent to Washington with the appeal. But at that time, we didn't have good photocopying, and so it's, what do they call this?
It's white on black.
They call the process, copies.
You'd be interested, the first person who signed the petition was Reverend Sinclair Reed, pastor of the Presbyterian Church in Allenwood.
And they're, do you want to just pass it there?
Okay.
Go. Yeah, I think.
Just to quickly conclude, there was a magazine, do you remember Liberty?
Yes.
Okay. Carl had marked this article, War Refugees Made in America. And I was interested in the things that he underlined. Wait a minute. It is happening here. Thousands of American families are turning their backs on demolished homes and scattered farms to face a blankly inscrutable future right here in the United States. War refugees all. No enemy is at their heels. Their own government ousted them. The lands they farmed are needed for army cantonments, for fields of maneuver, for the loading and storing of ammunition, and in its haste to provide for the national defense, the government made no provision for them. Of course the government pays for the farms it takes, but it drives a hard bargain. It does not pay cash in hand. Often the occupants of the land scarcely have time to pack their belongings before the government contractors move in, uprooting orchards, leveling fences, and demolishing buildings. But the payment is not made until months later. What is to be done? Well, there's nothing to be done. The Army said it needed 5 million acres of land and would pay its own appraised price for it. That's fair enough, isn't it? Or is it? Let's see. I said that the families were forced to abandon their farms and homes. That does not mean they were run out at bayonet point. What it amounted to was this. Here are you, farmer, hard scrabble. You have title to 40 acres of Georgia's red soil, which is worth $20 an acre, which supports your wife, 4 children, 2 hogs, a cow, a team of mules, and a $400 mortgage. You have planted your acres to corn, which is about knee-high when up rides the United States government in a big shiny automobile, and it says it has to have your farm because it looks like there's going to be a war and a big army camp is to be erected right here. To you, this is pretty awesome. Your land, says the government, has been appraised at $800. The house and sheds for which the government has no use but is willing to pay stand appraised at $300 more. Your mules, your cow or pigs, your furniture, your plow and stake wagons aren't wanted. You can take those with you. What do you say? Will you sell? Of course, you're not under compulsion to accept the offer from the government, and you can hire a lawyer to guide you through condemnation proceedings. What do you do? But naturally, you sell. You get $800 for your land, $300 for the buildings, and maybe $150 for your prospective crop. Not what you would realize at harvest time in cash, barter, and fodder and meal. You are paid the proportional value of your crop as of time of sale. And now, Farmer Hardscrabble, will you please move out by Monday morning? Your money? Oh, that will take a little time because it has to be sent from Washington. but you will have it by Christmas, surely. So out you go with your furniture and bedding and plow and pigs in the wagon and the cow hitched on behind. Out you go. But where? The red clay road is crowded with similar vehicles driven by your neighbors.
And I told you some things out. Please, if you're put together, please keep them back together because they're more or less in order from the earliest on. Okay? And this stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kids in our class to probably 29 or something like that in sixth grade, because the kids from Winter Valley were coming into school and suddenly they're gone. They weren't there. So it had quite an impact on our community, on our school system, on our businesses. And I read where all the township, when it came to vote, all the supervisors that were on the boards had moved. They weren't here. There wasn't anybody to conduct the election. We're going to try this.
I had a question of the lady in front of me here. Did you have to sign anything that you would not tell what you were doing?
I don't remember exactly signing that. I mean,
But everybody did keep their mouth shut.
but they had those big signs around.
And you were afraid that you spoke, or
Or it was like, the idea was that you were letting the enemy know what you were doing. I mean, it was a patriotic thing.
Psychological.
Ships.
Yeah, that's right. They had that kind of sign. And I'm not sure when we took the first chemistry course if we knew exactly what we were going to do. Because I remember there were rumors of what was going on down there and how they got it built. I don't know. But they
Janet, did you live in Hughesville when you worked down there?
yeah. They, I mean, all the houses were destroyed except the two houses in the church for recent training. And we didn't realize about the town. I didn't until they were having that anniversary celebration at Alvira.
What's the status of that ground now?
Ganglands.
What is the status of that? Who owns it?
Well, a good part of it is owned by the Pennsylvania Fish and Game, or Wildlife. Do I have that right? And it's Wildlife Game Preserve, one of the state game lands.
well, when they first opened that property to be able to get into it, the churches still stood on that road. The two churches were still there.
Yes.
And then were torn down sometime after you could drive in.
Yes, that's right. In fact, I was on a trip with two of my children, and my oldest girl, she was born in 53, 56. She's probably 5 years old, so, 60s. And the Montgomery Area Historical Society at the time, Adam Bingaman and Jerry Schoenberger, we had a trip out there, and we saw the churches before they were torn down. My daughter picked up two little pieces of stained glass and some little pieces of wood from the pews. I think she still has a friend, Phyllis House, told me that they were living real close chases across the road from the Somerset School. And a knock came on the door one day, and she was a little girl behind her mother. Her mother went to the door and opened the door, and there were two men dressed in dark suits, and they said, "We're taking your house." Just like that. There's one picture, a couple pictures in here. You'll see a group of people gathered around a tombstone, and they seem concentrating and interested on this tombstone. And what it is, there's a few sentences on it that says who this person is. I think it was McCarty. But on the tombstone it mentions that he was the first husband of Mrs. Hummel, who, along with her 3 children, were murdered by Hummel. And that is going to be the subject of our next program. And it will be in November.
Big one, and I think that had a little part of it that was real old, sort of in the middle. And then at the very end was the big cemetery.
Yeah, at the very end there was the Presbyterian, and then there were two at Alvira, and one was called Pine Knot, but I've seen it printed, and whether the paper spelled it this way or not, they spelled it P-I-N-K-N-O-T, and it looks like pin knot, P-I-N-N-O-T, pin knot. So I don't know if it was originally, it was supposed to be a French name, Pignot, or something like that, and it came out shiny knot. I don't know. Sir?
I sat in Stone Church back when they were taking over the property, and I left for the Army shortly thereafter. But I heard those speakers say that the land would go back to the people. And even right now, when we talk about it, you wonder why there's so much there for prison and why the government still has to hold their fingers on to this property, which no longer is used and no longer needed for those situations.
I can't answer that. Your name?
Ed Walton.
Oh, Mr. Walton. I'm Marion McCormick. I think you knew my older brothers.
Yeah, what was his name?
And Aaron Decker, Delbert Decker, Paul Decker. Yes. I remember your name from the alumni records.
Right.
Yes, and I know Mr. Jarrett feels the same way. And all that I can answer is what the warden told us at the meeting, that it's the first place. This is one thing that's way above her, and that. Of course, she had nothing to do with it at the time, but that the prison system cannot subdivide or sell the property. It would have to be turned over to another department of the government, and it just doesn't sound like that's going to happen. I don't know, but you never know.
The White Deer Valley Church was outside the fence, just outside.
Yes.
But it took an act of Congress to get an additional piece of land that they wanted to build their parsing on.
Really? And that was since
after the war.
After the war.
Right.
Well, we can have these pictures.
Before I retired, that the government is going to be doing some land swapping with the game commission. Everything from when you go in to the old Allenwood prison camp, from the golf course back to the fence, over to the Elm Sport Road, what they own, they're going to, rumor has they're going to give that back to the game commission in exchange for land out where the old cemeteries are and up this way towards the old box factory because of the prison itself. They want more ground there for security reasons. There's already been land surveyors in there prior to my retirement, so what rumor has...
Yeah. Well, it might be another case that it's just you don't find out the information.
Is that the part that was actually the town of Alvira?
The other interesting thing I remember about Alvira, right by the one big pond now that's there on the game lands, in the woods, if you push back the brush a little bit, there's 3 steps, concrete steps right there, and that was the corner of Bill Blessing's house. And they had to move from Alvira. Shirley and Kenny both went to school in Alvira, and they had to move to George a while, I think. But somebody here mentioned that a couple people had been looking at a house to build when they had to move, or a house to buy in Blackwell Valley, or near the brick church. Well, I was wondering if that was the same house as Blessings, because they eventually bought that, and Shirley said it was a mirror of their home in Alvira. So that there was a step up to the corner of the house, the big porch that went around two sides, and the Blessing farm that's still up here. And so whenever we go out, we kind of just separate the weeds to just try and see those steps again. One time we took a shovel, and along the side of the road, we dug up, and there was a slate sidewalk under the dirt right on the road.
But there's no wording of Matthew Boone, who was a cousin of Daniel Boone, and that's on property that
Blessing Park.
that is well, just not very well set aside.
Now that's not on the at the Stone Church grounds, though.
No.
No, it's on the prison ground, not on the Stone Church ground. Neither is you also got down near the Portuguese Presbyterian Church, another monument in the weeds is just not kept at all.
If there were revolutionary men there.
Well, there's revolutionary in Stone Church too.
On the north side of the Stone Church, like I said, that's the sweat lodge for the Native Americans that the institution had to build when we had a lot of Native Americans. I mean, they had to worship their own way. And what they did, they would put a tarp up, they would make like a teepee and go in there and build a fire and remove their clothes and go in there and sweat for the day.
Well, I didn't know that. Thank you very much.
How you doing? Very good.
Now, I thank the Bergers coming tonight. It was really interesting. I learned a lot from everybody who added to the program tonight. There was a lot that I didn't know. And I just remind you that the next meeting is going to be on November 15th, 7 o'clock in here. And I hope you can make it.
Did I hear that you could have a meeting at the church anytime you'd like? Is that what Mrs. McCormick said? Right. Yeah. And that's on prison grounds. You can't. The Stone Church. You can't just drive there.
No. Not anymore.
That's what the warden was anxious to have the church used locally, and invited us to have a meeting there, and invited the community to use it for church services. So I hope that happens, and I hope you can all come. Very looking forward.
Actually, all you need to do to go in is at the red light on traffic signal on Route 15 is go into the second building, the first one on the left, and sign in there, and you can drive out to the church.
Can you?
And so forth.
So you can do that on your own.